folks, welcome back to another Voxcast from me, the Bone, and you, the Chef. That's our new thing. I'm going to say that every time we're in a video together.
Yeah, I'm resigned to it now.
Yeah.
Almost as much as you're resigned to being a plant.
Yes, exactly.
It's happened now,
it's a good thing being a plant.
They just, they're just there.
They're just doing
chilling.
their thing. They're just doing their thing.
Yeah,
it's nice. Yeah, it's nice. It's a nice time. Yeah. So this is a Voxcast series. So now that the points have been released, we thought we would do a series called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And so we're going to do some faction focuses, mainly on the ones that we enjoy, and then depending on lots of different things, we will do other factions as well.
Because there's a lot.
There's a lot to do, and if we were to do
factions.
every faction, I'm more thinking about how things are just ever changing at the moment.
Yeah.
It might become redundant, but for now, we know we've just had a release, so we thought we would cover a few of our initial thoughts, and then as things continue, we can always update this series. So what do we mean by the good, the bad, and the ugly? Well, we mean what's good about the faction.
Yeah.
What we think is bad about the faction.
Yep.
And then ugly. And ugly is a different kind, because it's not
a hard
necessarily
word.
a good or a bad thing, but it's something that might need to be addressed or care. If you think outside of the box, you can kind of make your way around.
I think the ugly is, so I mean, obviously we're just going for the film theme here, just to really annoy Beard, so we can make jokes about it, obviously.
Yeah, because he won't know what this is.
He's like, what? What's that?
He goes, oh, that's a nice saying. You go, Beard, please, get some culture, man.
But I think ugly is going to be more subjective, and you'll see what we mean by that as we kind of go along. And yeah, it's not necessarily, good, bad, and ugly is just utterly terrible.
Yeah.
It is more along the lines of, this is kind of weird.
Yeah.
It could be a subjective piece. It could be something like you say, you kind of have to think outside the box. And it will be something that makes you almost sort of go, but I don't think that's, a bad thing. And neither do we. It's just...
We're just a bit lost.
It's just a bit like, I'm not really sure where I stand on this yet.
Yeah.
We need more time, we need more
games,
we need more data from tournaments, which are kind of happening around about now.
There's a couple starting to seep through.
Yeah, there's quite a few in like Poland and Croatia, I believe, are happening.
Because they're obviously a lot further along in their journey with what's happening.
I think some of the Aussie scene is starting back up again in certain areas where they're allowed to.
Yes. I think there was more plans, but anyway.
Yeah,
you guys follow the news, right?
That's a topic for another.
Yes. So today we're going to start with Tau.
So basically, it's more like the greater good,
the
bad, and
the ugly. Yeah. So, look, I love Tau. I always have loved Tau. They were my first army. I picked them up in 7th. But when I'd had a break from Warhammer for many years, I used to play the Dawn of War games, and I remember when the Tau one was released. I can't remember which. I think it was like the 3rd one. And I've been in love with them ever since. A lot of people say, oh, you just played Tau in 7th because they were broken. I actually started playing them before the formations. So, everyone just back off a little bit, okay? I'm not a power gamer, but then I did take advantage of that. Yes, I did.
Not a power gamer, trip tide.
Yeah, do it! But yeah, so Tau are in... I'm going to be honest, I think they're in a tough spot. I think you've really got to start thinking about how to use them differently now. Sort of. But unfortunately, with the points releases that have just happened, I believe actually you're going to see a similar style of play, which was the triptides and all that sort of stuff. But it's not going to be as effective because of the points taxes now.
So much more expensive to do.
It's so much more expensive to do, but it still, when you look at everything overall, seems to be where it's geared towards. And this makes sense. The reason this makes sense is because essentially, when you break down the codex for when it was originally written, it was ridden with some problems, in my opinion.
Very good.
But it was written with very much gunline castles in mind.
Yeah.
So now so that hasn't changed really. I mean, the Farsight stuff gave a bit of a breath of fresh air.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But when you look at the points changes now, the Farsight stuff actually becomes less appealing, in my opinion, other than the fact that it's really fun. But now we're kind of talking about competitive number crunching efficiency, right? So, but let's start with the good. Let's start with the good. I think things like Fish of Fury are very valid now. As we have seen, and we've played a lot of Ninth now in particular, transports are going to be key, I believe, in pretty much every army. You need them, and Tau Devilfish aren't actually too expensive.
No.
They're 103 points when you load them out with gun drones. And so it's 12 wounds, moves to 12, toughness 7, 3 up save. Yeah. It's not bad, right? And then you've also got, why transports are good is because you get them out on those objectives, then they blow up, and then all the troops come out, which are objective secured, and you get a couple of little bonuses with these guys as well with the drones.
Yeah.
Drones then become their own unit, and they can either stay in that objective, they can shoot off into different areas. Yeah. So I think that that whole Fish of Fury thing, which was, what it did, this was before my time, but that was a big thing in, like, I believe,
it was
5th?
Massive thing in 4th edition.
4th edition.
It was because it was a limited range of the Tau models. So history lesson here, guys. Mm-hmm. Riptides were not always around, and it was a glorious time. So they weren't always a thing, but it was a strange quirk of the rules where if you had like hover, if you were like a hovering tank, Devilfish specifically had something called landing gear. You could elect whether they were hovering and could be shot through, or if they were landed and blocked line of sight.
Oh, cool.
So you jumped out and you were like, yeah, I'm hovering. And then your fire warrior's fired, and then you go, right, at the end of that phase, I've now landed, so you can't shoot my fire warrior.
That's cheeky.
So it was just like, it was just really, it was a really cool thing, and you could totally see that happening in like Fluff. They come in, they like reverse up, like the doors bang open, they jump out, and then the Devilfish swoops around to provide covering fire. Yeah. It's really cool. It was a bit awkward to play against. Yeah. But it was a big thing in 4th, 5th edition. And yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be super vital now, because not only do you have the drones that you can kind of just jump off to nab an objective. Yeah. The transports themselves are really key to do so. And with Fly, you kind of just go, I don't care about terrain, I'll go over it.
Yeah, exactly.
You can get kind of wherever you really want to be.
Well, with a 12-inch move, it's solid. Yeah. I mean, it's not things like Eldari sorts of speed.
It's not a wave serpent.
It's not a wave serpent.
But it's also, but it's like 80 points cheaper than a wave serpent.
But, also as well with the gun drones, when you shoot, with the burst cannon on there and the gun drones, I would run them with drones always now. I would never put smart missile systems on there personally, mainly for the reason you just explained, because you can jump them out and you can get them to hold objectives and stuff like that, and you do get 12 strength 5 shots.
It's quite a bunch.
It's good, and obviously with your Markalite support and everything, that's pretty good. So that's one thing that's good. Things that came out, other things that came out as good, we've talked about. I mean, broadsides are no longer infantry, so they don't get the penalty for moving and shooting, so that is a good thing.
Conversely, they can't gain the benefit of light cover and things like that.
Sure.
Same about suits, but they couldn't in 8th anyway.
So you're kind of in the same spot.
It's a wash.
But I think anything at the moment which allows Tau especially to move and have no penalty is key. Yeah. Because, as we know, with a base of 4 ballistic skill, and with all of the terrain now, I find often without the proper Markalite support, you are hitting on 5s. Yeah. So if you get that clear line of sight, it's only a good thing, right? So broadsides came a good look, and as I was kind of saying before, Riptides are still very good. I've been avoiding using them on the channel because I'm kind of sick to the back teeth of them, but I cannot deny that they are still probably the best unit in the Tau Empire. Yeah. There is, you can't. And those would be the good ones. I mean, then you've got other things like
the captor modifiers helps Tau a lot.
It does help Tau a lot.
Helps them a lot, because now all of a sudden you can actually go, I can shoot that Alatok flyer that's got lightning fast on it. I mean, you wouldn't do that anymore. Get it? I get that. Yeah. But it means that you've got the ability to go, I can, not really worry about stacking modifiers. I mean, obviously if you've got like a bunch of Markalites on to the point of you've got the +1, then someone can counter that with their own -1 or a -2 potentially. But it helps you sort of, in more like a general purpose type way.
Yeah.
You know, shooting, moving to get a line of sight with a Markalite at, say, a unit of Gene Sealers that are under the effect of a Malanthrope now means that you're hitting them on 5s, not 6s.
Yeah.
Makes a huge
It makes
difference.
a
So they
huge
have
difference.
come out strong there with the Captain modifiers.
So that's good.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. Now we move on to the bad.
Sure.
Because we've been talking about Markalites in general. I had a discussion with one of you on the forums. You'll have to forgive me. I can't remember your name. But there was a few people I have spoken to who think the Markalites system is kind of fine how it is, and actually it should more be like a bonus for the army. Now, I categorically disagree with this for a couple of reasons. You need the Markalites with Tau because to make sure that you do destroy a unit. Now, I know that kind of sounds a bit like, oh, well, it shouldn't be like that. But for Tau, it has to be. Because really, you are only active in 2 phases, and that, well, 3 if you include the charge phase and someone is charging you. But really, you're active in the shooting phase now, and that's it. So we don't get Psychic. Maneuverability can be okay, but it's only medium okay. Do you know what I mean? It's got some problems there. So if you come down in the shooting phase and you don't delete a couple of units, it's a real problem for Tau. They've got no combat ability to kind of back that up. So you need to be able to actually do that to stay in the game. And now that Markalites are more expensive across the board, we were kind of working it out. We think it worked out at roughly almost like a 20, depending on what you take, like almost like a 20% tax.
So let's put it this way. Chapter Master is an amazing bonus, but you don't need it to make Space Marines good. It certainly goes a long way to it. Would you pay 400 points for a Chapter Master? Probably not.
No.
That's what Tau players kind of have to do to make their army work, and that's not a bonus. And I agree. I mean, we've had many at length discussions about Markalites and what would be a system that would be interesting and what a system that could actually work would be, or vice versa, making it like a bonus.
Yeah.
If you have Markalites, great. If you don't, you're still able to do stuff, and I think that's where the issue comes in, because they don't have any innate rerolls, which personally I don't have a problem with, because rerolls upon rerolls upon rerolls is pretty bland.
Yes, and we've seen how that multiplier can actually make some armies so incredibly powerful that it's almost not fun to play or play against. Correct. Unless you're into crashing your enemies, which, hey, there's an element of that in all of us. I get that. But that force multiplier for me of just being able to reroll everything all of the time. Like, I mean, sure, Tau do get Kalyon, but it's like a once or... and
with limitations.
And with limitations, because you can't move.
Yep.
The only difference now with the FAQ is the person...
You can choose which ones.
You can choose which ones, but they have to remain stationary.
Again, imagine if Chapter Master was a once per game thing.
Yeah.
You'd be like, I mean, it's good. And you probably still would spend the CP on it. Because it is good, and you're Marines already, and you've got, reliable firepower, good AP, and all that sort of stuff. But it would still be a bit more of a decision. Now, Kalyon and Montcar are kind of rolled into the points cost of the Tau commanders anyway. Yeah. Having said that, it's once per game, regardless of the commanders that you have.
Yeah, well, unless you're Shadowsun.
Sure. Who's a special character, which is a bit different.
Yeah.
Again, it would be like, okay, imagine regardless of however many captains you have, one of them can have their aura turned on for reroll ones to hit. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I know we're comparing apples and oranges here, guys, but from we're just talking from like a game design point of view.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I don't think the Markalite system works as it currently does. I don't think it worked all the way throughout 8th, and now it's just more expensive for it. Yeah. You almost want to try and build a Tau army that doesn't bring any Markalites at all and just brings more guns.
Yeah.
Because this is the downside. You're paying for stuff that's making other stuff killy, and you kind of go, okay, cool. But if Markalites cost 80 points, but you get one Markalite off, and then it was an aura effect for everyone, not just on that one unit, so that they could fire. I mean, that makes no sense mechanically. But now we're just talking a Space Marine Captain. Yeah. Now, Space Marine Captain can bring guns. They can, Markerite can't fire anything else.
No, that's it.
Now, if your Pathfinders could fire their Markerite and their Carbine, okay, could get a bit interesting.
Yeah.
But because you've got that inability to do anything else other than support, and there's nothing wrong with support units.
No.
When they're costed appropriately.
Yeah.
A single Apothecary, and a CP for the Warlord trait from Faith and Fury, giving a 5-up shrug to an entire Marine army, because you're going to blob up around it. Yeah, 60 points every day of the week.
Yeah, exactly.
Every day of the week.
And so that's kind of what we mean when it's like...
That's such a minuscule amount of your army.
Yeah.
Now, if that Apothecary was like 300 points, you'd be like, no, I'm not doing that. Why would I do that?
And this is the thing. So then, I think it's an interesting point as well. So you've kind of got to take more guns, but that then also you kind of, with terrain, and then there's minuses and stuff, if you take no Markerites, then the majority of your army is hitting on 5s
Generally
most of the
5s.
time, right?
Yeah.
And
with
so
no
there
rerolls.
with no rerolls. And there are some armies which can get away with that to a degree. I think Orcs are in an interesting spot as well, but they obviously have a very high ballistic skill, but you take lots of guns with Orcs, right?
Yeah, I mean, you've not really got anything in Orcs that makes them dakka on 5s outside of a single stratagem.
But the thing, the Orcs are still very active in the fight phase, whereas the Tau are not. So there seems to be missing. So I think that's bad. I think the Markerite is bad, and I don't want. When you start to take Markerites out, like, you actually lose more of the synergy of the army as well.
You lose the fluff and the flavour.
Yeah, exactly. So. And I was kind of wearing it in 8th because the points were a bit. You were kind of like, okay, that's fine, but it just it doesn't cut it for me anymore. I think it needs a complete rework. I actually think how Markerites work in general should be a complete rework. Even if you just made them not heavy, that would be a huge change. Made them assault weapons. And there is one prototype weaponry that you can do that in the Greater Good on one unit of Pathfinders. But it's one unit, right?
Yeah.
And
they're Pathfinders.
And they're Pathfinders.
They die to a stiff breeze.
Yeah, exactly. Toughness 3, 5-up save. If they're not in cover, they die.
And even if they are in cover, they probably die.
And that's another thing with this tax as well. And because you're paying what I believe is far too much for Markerites, or like it's one of the two. You've got to rework the system, or you've got to point them appropriately. And anyone who plays Tau knows that as soon as you start to remove their Markerites, that's it. Because you're paying a high tax for this thing that just gets removed, by turn 2 or 3, if you're playing Nosy Salt, you're not going to have Markerites anyway. So you've just paid a tax for something which then gets completely removed from your army, and then you don't have enough guns to do it anyway. So you're in this position where it kind of doesn't work out either way, in my opinion. So I think that's bad. I think the point, so that's Markerites.
Yeah.
Because I think
that's the big
that's
bad
the big bad.
us,
That's the big bad. There are some other things as well, but that's the thing that for me, it's the points tax on that and how the army works, especially with 9th when you want to have a lot of Markerites because you want to be moving around and getting on those objectives and all that sort of stuff. I think that's where the problem is going to lie with the army, and it makes it very difficult to play. So anyway, that's done. I could talk about it for a lot longer, but we don't want to make this an hour-long discussion about Markerites. Let's go to ugly. So this is an interesting one. There's a couple of things that I think are ugly.
I think there's a lot of ugly in the Tau, actually.
And I mean, Markerites do bleed into that. But,
but again, this is where we kind of need to preface this now. Ugly does not mean worse than bad. It just means this is kind of just in a really weird spot.
Yeah. I think the Overwatch mechanic is ugly.
Yeah,
I think it's an ugly.
It's
ugly
clunky.
Thing.
It slows the game down. Like the whole point of removing Overwatch, for me, was to give combat a bit of a boost.
Yeah.
Like, I know a lot of people are saying combat's dead. It's really not. It's really not, guys. You just can't run forward with an all combat army anymore. You need a little bit of support elements and some thinking.
Yeah.
Also, play with a good amount of terrain. Don't go like, well, I've got 6 bits of terrain. That's enough. It's not. It was never enough, quite frankly.
And now more so. You need more.
So everyone else has lost Overwatch, or pays for Overwatch, or it needs to be a special rule, which no one has, other than the Tau. But the problem is by doing that, everyone goes, oh yeah, like we kept our Overwatch, that's amazing. Is it? Because you're just going to carry on playing a castle army, which doesn't help you win games in Ninth.
It really doesn't. It really doesn't.
It lets you, it forces you into playing this playstyle, and it kind of forces you to, oh, well, I've got Overwatch, that's cool, yeah, I'll be Tau-Sept again. Tau-Sept's boring.
Yeah.
It's so boring.
Yeah.
That's all you see.
Yeah, it's it really, I think you kind of nailed it where you said it kind of forces you to play a particular style of way, and that's because of how the codex has been written.
Yeah,
essentially, it forces you because it is the most efficient way to play the army.
Yeah, because it gives you that third phase.
Exactly, which Tau desperately need, because, like I say, they can be quite mobile, but you've got to build an army around that. But then again, you start to sacrifice other things to be able to do that, and then you don't have enough guns to start clearing them out because your ballistic skill is either rubbish or you've paid all this extra points to do that, and so you get into a bit of a muddle with the whole thing. And this is where the army, I actually think if we were to say anything is ugly, the army at the moment is ugly with how it works, because the game is wanting you to have a more dynamic force, which pushes out onto objectives and stuff. And this army is not at the moment designed to do that. And that's where it becomes a problem.
Yeah, and you could argue as well, but there's other gunline armies, and I would argue, yes, there are, like Guard, for instance, who can spam pretty fast vehicles. Hellhounds, Chimeras, even your Layman Russ are now moving and shooting without penalty.
Yeah.
Talon, moving and advancing with their heavy weapons, which is awesome.
It's amazing. Right?
And you kind of go, yeah, I'll do that. Oh, I'll take the -1 to hit. Fine.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to shoot anyway because of the big, line of sight blocking in the way.
Thing,
They've got the ability to be maneuverable whilst also still being on kind of a half decent side when it comes to points.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, I think Guard actually.
They've come out relatively well, I think. But that's a topic for another time. Yes. I think with the Tau, I agree. The army itself is ugly because there's pretty much one efficient play style. Now that's not to say that you can't do Farsight, or you can't do Fish of Fury or Crisis Bombs, and we saw a whole bunch of that towards the end of 8th once the Greater Good supplement came out.
And it was cool.
And it's awesome. I mean, that for me, I like the Riptides. I think they're a really cool model, but for me, it's kind of like, these are also a model that there's supposed to be about 50 of in the entire fluff.
Yeah.
Why are there 3 on every table? I mean, maybe not so much at the moment, but why were there 3 on every table of every Tau army in every event? Yeah. Because it was just that darn good. Yeah. I hate the Storm Surge because it's a static defense platform which doesn't match the fluff. The fluff for the Tau is mobile fighting. They can't do it. There's no option really, no effective option for you to do it, and you can do it, but you're hamstringing yourself.
Yeah, which
is a pity.
It's a problem. So, I mean, I will continue to kind of play around with some different sort of styles. I haven't been running Tau, but I'm actually coming up with a list which I will run shortly, which is going to go back to a more sort of Fish of Fury style, infantry-based, maybe Crisis Suits on Foot sort of list with a lot of Markalite support. And let me tell you, I'm already writing it, and I'm going I'm just not getting enough bang for my buck, but I'm going to give it a go and see how it cracks on. But I think that these are sorts of our feelings about how the army is running at the moment. And again, I do want to preface, these are just our thoughts. Some of you may love running the 3 Riptides. Cool. Yeah. That's awesome. All I would say is, because I used to run it competitively as well, if I were you, I'm sure you're feeling a similar feeling of frustration at the moment, because the army that is your codex wants you to play got taxed through the roof. Which, I mean, look, shield drones were a problem. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I kind of agree with where they're at.
But again, I would say that's an ugly, because that's an inherent problem with the drones themselves, not just that. The points going up is bad, but the unit itself was bad. Yeah. And that, for me, makes it ugly because that's a design thing.
Yeah, and it was necessary
because they were so good.
Because they were so good, right? So, and you needed to keep the shield drones with to keep your army alive, because what people were doing was actually sacrificing Markalites for more firepower. Yeah. And it became a game of attrition, right? So your Riptides would stay around till turn 4, and by that stage, maybe And, you know, there was Tau were good, don't get me wrong. They've always been good. I think they're an ugly army, but, you know, competitively, I think they've taken a hit now. But really, even in like the competitive scenes and all that, there was a few very, very good players, and those players...
There's a lot of good players, actually.
But but that made it really work.
Yeah, the ones that really, really made it work.
Yeah, exactly. Sure. But I don't know. I think
the main issue is that it's exactly what you say. Your codex has kind of, and with the rules changes to Overwatch, whilst Tau players not losing Overwatch, coupled that with that kind of seems to be funneling you towards a particular play style. The points increases have made that a lot more difficult because you're having to sacrifice a bunch of stuff that's going to hold objectives, and you're not as mobile as you used to be because of various changes to flight, which I think is only a good thing as a whole for the army. Or as a whole for the game rather, it's a bad thing for the army because they were so reliant on it. Yeah. Now you kind of go, I can tag the Riptide, I'm going to get shot at -1, so be it. But if you tag them with the right unit, you kind of go, cool, you weren't shooting at the unit that you wanted to shoot at. Which I've said in like every game of Ninth when it comes to Big Guns Never Tire is, oh, well, you can't tag vehicles anymore because they can shoot you. Yeah, no, but you're dictating what they shoot, which is the big thing. Yeah. If I charge into a Riptide with a unit of, you know, like 10 boys, I go, great, you're not shooting at my war bikers over there. Yeah. Because I've told you that you have to shoot at. And in all honesty, at -1, you might not even kill all those boys. So that, you know, therefore you kind of go, you know, that does hurt that build a fair bit because, you know, and you use this to great effect in many, many attacks because you'd go, bang, center, surrounded by drones, move me. I dare you. You can't. Now, you need units to be holding objectives in your own lines, at the back here. And that was a very sort of ITC style play anyway. But I think because so sort of back to the original point, the Codex and the Overwatch is kind of funneling you to that play style of hunkering up as a castle. Yeah. But the core game and the missions are kind of making you go, you need to be quicker than that. And Tau just can't do it. They can't bring the models. They can't bring the firepower. They're just in a bit of a rough spot, I think. I agree. There are going to be ways around it. You know, will those ways be competitively viable? We don't know. Will they be fun? Yes. Crisis Bombs and Fish of Fury for days. I mean, that's awesome. That is awesome.
I will always play Tau, but I just want them to be dynamic. I don't want to have to play a gun castle in order to stand on my own 2 feet. Yep. And as you've just said, quite frankly, at the moment, if you do play that classic 3 Riptides list, I'd be very surprised if you do as well as you used to.
You'll certainly do well, but you
won't be competing against other armies which have speed on you, and which have the ability to have decent ballistic skill with no penalty that can continue to hammer down on you. I can think of about 4 armies off the top of my head, which it's already going to be a real problem.
Yeah. So we've got to see what happens. You know, I mean, there's working with what we've got now is the important thing. I think you certainly can make some interesting Tau lists, but you are 100% going to have to get out of old habit. And I think that is kind of across the board for many armies, not all armies, but many armies. And Tau, I think, are one of the foremost of those. Is I think getting out of that mindset of how it used to be, it's not going to serve you very well. Some armies can get you by, and again, that kind of goes in with. Incidentally, that makes the entire army, in a way, both good, bad, and ugly. It's ugly because of, as we mentioned, the overall design. It's bad because it's not very interesting to play with, in my opinion, and which is a shame because I love Tau as well. They were my second army. They were the second army that I started. But it's good in a way in the fact that you can kind of go, you know what? I'm not going to run what I used to run, and you can challenge yourself, and you can decide, you know what can I do to make it interesting? What can I do that's sort of, you know, going to break the mold, and just try some stuff, you know? I mean, I think that's going to be the way forward, I think, for a lot.
Yeah, I agree. Cool.
What would your final verdict be on it? Where they stand at the moment, this very second in 9th with the points? And their old codex.
Old codex.
Current codex.
Their current codex. I feel a bit... Well, I mean, I feel a bit... I'm really interested to see when more tournaments come out, the sort of data that we get back on them, because this is just a gut feeling as well from what we've played. I feel that without some major reworking, and it doesn't necessarily need to be points, it needs to be some reintroduction of rules or something like that. I feel like they're just going to be a middle tier army at this stage. That's how I feel.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think that they're certainly not going to be. But this is all just conjecture. We just don't know until we get the events. But even
I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah,
I hope I'm wrong.
Even anecdotally, sort of with in friendly games, of course they can. If you go down to your friendly local gaming store, and obviously it depends on your group meta. I know meta's thrown around a lot, and most of the time people talk about it in a competitive sense, but you've also got to account for like gaming group metas. So where I used to live, it was a very casual setting. People would bring, not like not like competitive tier list. You'd get a few competitive players, and they'd be like, "Oh, I'd like to try out, a few competitive games." I was like, "Yeah, absolutely. I'll bust out, this was back in 7. I'll bust out the white scars that I took to tournaments and went, 5-1 with." But the majority of people just went, I just want to play 40k because it's fun, Like, what have you brought? It's like, oh yeah, like I've brought my witch cult army. Sweet. I
love that.
It's like I bought 60 witches on foot. Nice. It was just that kind of like friendly atmosphere. So if that's kind of your atmosphere,
you're going to be fine.
Tau will be fine. If your atmosphere is super, super hardcore competitive and you've invested in making a super, super competitive Tau list with 8th,
I don't know.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one.
I really don't. It's going to have to change a lot.
Yeah,
but
I think
hopefully we talked about a couple of tools which would be interesting. I mean, stealth suits are sort of interesting, although they went up a bit in points. They're a bit expensive now, in my opinion. Ghost kills again are interesting, but they took a bit of a hit with the
I think they're especially the interesting ones because that's that mobile forward insertion element that you kind of want.
Yeah.
In 9th edition, I think is going to be really, really quite premium.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll see a resurgence. I would love for like the tournaments to reopen and they go, oh yeah, this Talis one. And people are like, oh my god, what's the Talis? It was like 18 stealth suits and 3 ghost kills.
Let's go, yeah.
Okay. So we are in a weird spot because no one can play games right now. Really, not to that level, not on a big scale. So we've just we've got to work with what we've got, and I think the good players, and this is always going to be the good players will make it work. They will find the way to make it work. And that's competitive style, the top tier people.
It's not us.
No, it's not. So for us to look at it and kind of go, I'm not so sure. Other people might be looking at it going, yeah, I can make it work. I can make it work. It'll be tough, but I can do it.
Yeah.
Because but those were the people that were breaking the mold in 8th edition anyway.
Exactly.
And they will continue to do so. When that will happen depends on when we can do stuff. So again, it's an interesting spot. I think I would agree they're in a rough spot, but that's not necessarily as a result of 9th edition by itself. I think that's just because I had problems with the 8th edition codex anyway.
Yeah.
For the exact reasons that we've kind of discussed.
And we've kind of discussed the problems with the now that we've had the points updates and stuff. All it's done is make the wounds that already existed and the problems that already existed with some factions much wider and more obvious. And now with Tau particularly, I think it's just a lot more, it's glaringly obvious what the problems with the army are. But yeah, look,
that's enough of that.
That's enough of that. I still love Tau. I'm still going to play them as much as humanly possible because the greater good is amazing. I like togas in general, especially if they're purple. So don't feel too disheartened, guys. It's going to be fine. I have nothing more to say in it all. No. But I say it's going to be fine. I hope it's going to be fine. Yeah. We will figure it out together for the greater good. So until next time, this has been The Bone and you, the Chef, and we will see you for another faction breakdown very soon.